question his sincerity. Why don't you love us? Why don't you help us? And I believe the very next verse really falls into what God wants us to know. Moses, for 40 years, was in the wilderness learning how to trust God. You remember Paul was 3 years in Arabia, then 11 years in his own city, 14 years before God used him. And then what about Joseph? He, you remember, was in prison for 13 years before God brought him to the top. So God is not in a hurry. He'll take his time. It was some 20 years that Saul chased David. Why? Because God used Saul to make David the great psalmist. So when we go through these moments of not trusting, it drives us crazy because God is not working quick enough. Well, in verse 7, we need to do something. We need to start casting.
But it's what we do with it that makes the biggest difference in our lives. So over the next few minutes, Pastor Steve takes a look at the Apostle Peter's advice to cast all anxiety and worry on the Lord. It's through this action that we'll see our faith grow and our stress dwindle. Let's listen.
Shall we open our Bibles to 1 Peter chapter 5? 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 7. And there are two major weapons that Satan will use in your life throughout your Christian walk. And one of those is the weapon of pride. Satan can use pride in just a very powerful way to keep you from really being used as an instrument of God. The second weapon that Satan will use constantly is fear. Incredible fear that will paralyze you from being all that God wants you to be. And in 1 Peter chapter 5, Peter now deals with both of these. He deals with the area of really pride, dealing with the life of humility.